The Forgotten Holiday. Today's class is dedicated by Bill and Sue Auerbach in honor of the graduation of their son Binyomin, who's graduating HTC. We wish him a lot of atzlacha. He should bring nachas to his parents, to his family, to the community, to Klal Yisrael. So Mazel Tov Binyomin on your graduation. Everything in Yiddishkeit has many components to it. If you take any of the rituals that we have, any of the mitzvahs that we have, there's myriads of explanations of what's behind it. Of course, Hashem said so. But what's really the significance? What does it represent? A great example of this is karpas on Pesach. We take an onion and we dip it in salt water. Does anyone know why we dip it in salt water? So there's several reasons, right? We want the children to ask questions. Pesach is about curiosity. It's about the children asking. We want them to be involved, be really questioning us and getting answers. It's a way to get them intrigued. But then there's the element of karpas, that we are remembering the pain and the tears of the Jewish people in Mitzrayim. There's the idea of what karpas, the gematria, the numerical equation, or rather the mnemonic of karpas, and what it represents, the amount of time, the amount of people that were in Mitzrayim, and so on. The idea is that everything in Yiddishkeit has many layers to it. And the same really applies to Yomim Tovim. If you look at the holidays that we have, there are many components of the Yomim Tovim, of the holidays that we have. Let's look at Pesach. Let's look at Rosh Hashanah, right? So Yomim Tovim in general, or Sukkot rather, Yomim Tovim in general, the main ones, have two aspects. Number one, it's an agricultural observance in the sense that when Torah tells us about the Yontif, it's always connected with what's going on at that time of the year in Eretz Yisrael, in Israel. Okay, so if it's the time of the ripening of the fruit, if it's the time of the harvest, if it's the time of gathering it into the silos, whatever is going on that time agriculturally, Torah is referring to that when it talks about the Yontif. So when Torah tells us about Sukkot, for example, we know that Sukkot is the time when we're bringing the harvest into the ingathering into the house, right? Or Pesach is a time where there's a certain level of ripening. And when it comes to Shavuos, it's the harvest, right? But then there's another component to the Yontif. And that's the element of what it's commemorating. What happened historically on that time? Why do we celebrate Pesach, right? What's Pesach about? In addition to it being in the spring, Pesach celebrates our exodus from Egypt. We got out of Mitzrayim, and this is what this Yontif is, and we're celebrating it. Happens to be a certain time of the year, agriculturally, which is significant, especially if you're a farmer. Sukkot, what are we commemorating? Let's look inside in the Chumash. Torah tells us, you should keep the matzos, because on this day, Hashem has taken you out of Mitzrayim, and keep this for generations to come. Right? What does it say about Sukkot? The pasuk tells us, on Sukkot you should dwell in Sukkot for 7 days. Out of Eretz Yisrael, it's 8 days. So you should know, in order that you, the Jewish people, should know that Hashem has kept us, protected us, watched us. We were held in or living in huts during all the years that we were going out of Mitzrayim. So we're remembering the fact that we were in the desert for so long and we had protection around us, above us, under us, and to commemorate that, these great miracles that happened to us for decades in the desert, we are having this Yontif of Sukkot. Shavuos, what happened on Shavuos? Anyone know? We received the Torah, very good. But if you look in the Chumash, there's no mention of it. It doesn't say this is the holiday you got the Torah. Let's look into the actual text and see, what does Torah tell us about Shavuos? Right? It says you should count from the day after Shabbos, which means the second day of Pesach, from the day when you bring the Omer, count 7 complete weeks, okay, until the day after the 7th week, and then you'll bring a special mincha, a new mincha, an offering to Hashem. Any mention of Matan Torah here? Something about counting the day after, 7 weeks, 49 days.
7 weeks.
Yeah, right. But there's no mention of Shavuos here. Let's look at another place where Torah talks about Shavuos. Torah says it's the festival of harvest, which is Shavuos, first fruits of your labors, which you'll sow in the field, and the festival of the ingathering, which is Sukkot. Okay, you're bringing everything back in, the fresh, and so on. It doesn't say anything about Shavuos being the holiday we receive the Torah. Or in Shmais, Chag Shavuos Tasa Lecha, make for you the holiday of Shavuos, a festival of weeks, literally translated, the first of the wheat harvest, and the festival of the ingathering Sukkot at the turn of the year. Matan Torah is not mentioned here. Another place we have in Bamidbar. Okay, it says Uviyem Abikurim, and this is what we say in the davening, on the day of the first fruits, when you offer up a new meal offering to Hashem on your festival of weeks, it should be a holy convocation for you, and you should not perform any mundane work. Again, no mention of Torah. So we have the mention, just like on Sukkot, agriculturally what's going on. We have the mention, just like on Pesach, agriculturally what's going on. But we don't have the commemoration of what happened historically to us as a nation during that time. Okay, and it's very strange. And we can go on. There's other sources. There's 5 sources in the Torah for this Yontif, and it's all about counting and about first fruits, ingathering, whatever else is going on agriculturally, but not, well, ingathering is really Sukkot. But it doesn't tell you that we receive the Torah on this day. Now, we know that we receive the Torah on this holiday. It's not. We're not trying to figure that out. We're going to get to that. But we know that we receive the Torah. But is it just a coincidence? Does it happen to be that on this Yontif, which we celebrate because we have to count weeks, we ended up receiving the Torah on this day? It can't just be a coincidence. I mean, nothing's a coincidence ever. That's what we believe in, especially in Torah, on the way things play out, and definitely in Yomim Tovim and holidays that we have. So why is it that this holiday of weeks, this holiday of counting, it so happens? Who knew? Torah was given on the same day. And Torah doesn't explain it. Now, to make matters even more complex, Shavuos does not have to be on the day we receive the Torah. See, if we receive the Torah on the 6th day of Nisan, Shavuos doesn't always have to be on the 6th day of Nisan, because Torah doesn't give us a date for this holiday. Yom Kippur, it says, celebrated on the 10th day of the first month of Tishrei. Rosh Hashanah, it calls it the 7th month, really. Rosh Hashanah is celebrated on the first day of the 7th month. Pesach, 15th day. It tells exactly when to do it. Sukkot, 15th day of the first month, and so on. Shavuos, it says, 49 days after the counting. On the 50th day will be Shavuos. Now, before we had a set calendar, the way that we did counting was people would come to the Jewish court, to Bezdin in Yerushalayim, and say, hey, we saw a moon. If you saw a new moon, that means it's a new month. Now, the prior month could have 30 days to it. It could have 29 days to it, without getting into all the details of how this mitzvah, which is the first mitzvah that we received, of making a calendar, of figuring out the month, and so on, of counting. Sometimes the month of Nisan, now it has 30 days. But it doesn't always have to have 30 days. In times of the Beis HaMikdash, when they were counting based on seeing the moon, Nisan could have 29 days to it. And Iyar could have 30 or 29 as well, the next month. Okay? So when you count the 50, when you count 49 days, you get to the 50th and you're celebrating Shavuos, it could be the 7th of Sivan, it could be the 5th of Sivan. You don't know when it's going to turn out to be. It doesn't always have to come out to that time. Hillel established after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and we saw that the Romans are not allowing the Jewish people to have that authority where you could come and they could establish the dates properly, so he made a calendar. Don't confuse this with Hillel the Elder, which was about 400 years before Hillel of the calendar, but Hillel that made the calendar put together a system where we know exactly which months have which length of days. Some of them are set, some of them change based on the year, but we have a set calendar. It's interesting. One of the things of this calendar is Yom Kippur can never be on a Friday, nor can the first day of Rosh Hashanah be on a Friday, and several other interesting things that come as a result of this. But Shavuos, originally, before we had a set calendar, not necessarily would it be on the day we received the Torah. Today it is, but not necessarily. The Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch explains this in the laws of Shavuos. He talks about it. He says the 50th day of the Omer is called Atzeres in Torah. That's what our sages refer to it, which means count 49 days, and the 50th day you make the holiday. Whether the way you calculate it, he explains, if you're calculating it based on the old way, if you will, of before the calendar, the original way, the proper way of making months, Shavuos could be a different day. It doesn't have to be on the 50th at the same time as it could very often be, but not necessarily. Okay, so it's pretty interesting. Every other yontif has a agricultural component, celebratory element. It has a historical aspect of what we're celebrating on this day. And Shavuos does not. Has the agricultural part, but it doesn't have the Matan Torah part. And we know we received the Torah. And it turns out that we don't even celebrate it necessarily on that day. Today we do, thanks to the calendar. But Torah doesn't mention it. In all 5 places where Torah refers to Shavuos, it talks about new fruit, it talks about counting, it talks about weeks, 49, 50, all these interesting things. But Torah doesn't say, Luchais doesn't say, giving doesn't say, Sinai doesn't say. Why is that? Not only that, but if you take this further, you'll find that we don't even know exactly when Torah was given. Okay? That's also a date which is argued about among our sages. We have a consensus. But if you look in the Chumash, it says, in the 3rd month, which we know is Sivan, the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim. From the 3rd month of going out of Mitzrayim, we came to Midbar Sinai. We came to the Sinai desert on the 3rd month. It doesn't say what day. What day did we receive the Torah? How long were we there for? Now we know certain things happened. There were 3 days to prepare. So at least 3 days. Moshe went up the mountain, down the mountain multiple times to give us instructions from Hashem of how to prepare. We have certain references. But exactly that it's on the 6th day, it's unclear. And there are arguments. Chazal, our sages tell us that it was on the 6th day of Sivan. Rabbi Yossi says it was on the 7th day, and the Gemara in Shabbos has a whole discussion about it. And we all know they came when they came to Mount Sinai, but we don't know how long they were there for till they received the Torah. 6 days, 7 days. Was there really only 6? Did Moshe Rabbeinu add a day on his own? And Hashem agreed to that additional day that he added. So there's a lot of moving parts here. So number 1, Torah doesn't tell us about the giving of the Torah on this anniversary. Number 2, our sages who discuss it argue which day it exactly was. And although we celebrated on the 6th day, it's interesting. Now, why is such a yontif of receiving the Torah and such an important piece of our history shrouded in such mystery? Well, why isn't it so clear? It's not a small thing. We received the Torah. We became a nation. Hashem chose us. He gave us such a tremendous gift as receiving the Torah. We don't have a clear date on it. It doesn't tell us exactly what's going on. Why is there such unclarity in this idea? Now, not only that, but Torah tells us that you need to remember certain things. Okay, we have 6 remembrances that we say after davening. Okay, other communities say 10 remembrances. We say 6. Okay, some of them say 10. Yeah. So some of the things that we say, you have to remember going out of Mitzrayim. You have to remember Shabbos. You have to remember what Amalek did for you. And then there is Chayrev. Chayrev is another name for Sinai. You have to remember it. How do you remember it? Torah doesn't tell us what to do to remember it. When it comes to going out of Mitzrayim, remember Pesach. What do? We have a whole Seder, right? Comes Sukkot, we do something to remember it. We go out of our houses, we eat and learn in the Sukkah. We're doing something to remember it, an actionable thing. And in Torah, always, when you have to remember something, you have to commemorate something, it's always associated with action. And Torah is very specific how it wants us to do things. Okay? Remember going out of Mitzrayim, we say Shema twice a day. Part of that is the element, the 3rd section of Shema, is that we went out of Mitzrayim. It's not just, oh, by the way, keep it in mind. Remember Sinai. How should I remember it? What should I do to remember it? What day should I celebrate it? How do I do all these things? These are not small stuff. And Torah doesn't tell us what to do. Okay? So there's another layer of the difficulty with this special yontif of Torah doesn't tell us what happened on that day. It's not clear what date it happened. We don't have specific mitzvahs that what we're supposed to do besides having a yontif, 2 days holiday that we do. How do you celebrate it? Eat cheesecake. Well, what do you do? There's no mitzvah like matzah that you have on Shavuos. Chassidus tells us a very interesting explanation to this, and there's several steps. Bear with me; it's a little bit deep, but it's a little bit of several steps of this explanation. And this explanation also teaches us a lot of things about life in general, and you could apply this right away. Rashi tells us that when Torah talks about the day we came to Har Sinai, it says Bayem Hazeh, on this day. It doesn't say on that day. What's the difference between this day and that day? This day is here, it's relevant, it's current, it's present. Hahu is historic. Okay? That day, remember? This day means it's here. And the reason is because Torah has to be something that's relevant to us the whole time. We can't open up a Chumash and learn or listen to the Torah or participate in a class and feel this is beautiful information from 3,300 plus years ago. We have to look at it as Zeh, as it's here, as it's now, as it's relevant. Now, whenever you take a holiday and you give it specific instructions, this is how you're going to commemorate this. Eat this type of food at this hour on this day, you just limited it to a particular ritual. And you run the risk of losing that real life experience associated with it. You could get lost in the technical detail of it. Okay? So Torah says, we're not going to tell you exactly what to do to celebrate this yontif, because we don't want it to God forbid, get stuck in an old process of remembering something that happened then. Then you have to tell you, don't forget, it's not just then, it's also now. Let's keep it something which doesn't get stuck with a particular ritual per se. Now, we want it to be, we'll call it ahistorical. Okay, it should be relevant and present now. Okay, and by not telling us exactly what date it is, it becomes a little bit more real and ongoing, as opposed to something that happened then. You follow? If you tell me this is the date that you remember the giving of the Torah, then it's okay. That's the date. That was yesterday. It was tomorrow. It was thousands of years ago. When you don't tell me exactly what it is, it's an ongoing, living thing. Of course, there was a date when it happened, but we're not so much focusing on that date per se. The Maharal of Prague, attributed to being the maker of the Golem, passed away in the year 1609. He has a beautiful explanation about Shavuos, which helps us to understand this even further. He says, what is Shavuos? It's the 50th day, right? What do you do to get to the 50th day? Torah tells us you count 49 days. You don't count the 50th day. Why don't you count the 50th day? Because 50 is a level that you can't achieve with your own efforts. You're going to reach a level that humanly, you don't achieve that. You do your part up until that point. You count and so on. But you get to you reach a level 49 where Hashem says, let me give you number 50. I'm going to take you, let's call it a quantum leap. I'm going to take you to a stage that you can't achieve on your own. Okay? Let's take an example from the Rambam. When the Rambam talks about prophecy, he explains that you don't achieve prophecy. Okay? Hashem decides that this person is going to become a prophet. He's going to give him, endow him, bestow upon him prophecy. But he doesn't do it to anybody. It's someone who is worthy, who is fit. He doesn't earn or achieve prophecy. Hashem gives him that prophecy. When Yidden count for Matan Torah, and we prepare ourselves, and we work and refine every aspect of our being, the 49 days, which they represent the 7 midos, the 7 emotional faculties of ourselves. And within these 7, we count or we work on each one with the way they're made up of 7. Then finally you reach number 49, and Hashem says, okay, 50, I'm giving you the Torah. I'm giving you this level of, in Kabbalah, Sha'ar Nun, the 50th gate. Which means that Shavuos represents a level that the human being was not able to achieve it on its own. We're able to work so hard, grow so much, develop to such an extent that Hashem says, here's number 50. You don't have that by any other yontif. Okay? It's like the difference between the intellectual capacity of an adult and that of a child. It's two different worlds. The Maral says receiving of the Torah, when the Jewish people earned, what was given to us at that time was so different and so beyond anything we had up until that point. It's not a humanly achievable thing. You have to work towards it, you have to prepare towards it, but at some point Hashem gives it to us. So we have this element that Torah is greater than human achievement. At the same time, we see a very interesting thing regarding the date line. Shavuos, because of its uniqueness, that you have to count 49 days to get there. If you were traveling and you crossed the date line, okay, so you left on a Tuesday and you reached your destination somewhere, let's just call it in Korea, you reached there on Thursday. Thursday night, what should you count? What number? Okay. Tuesday night, you counted number 4. Okay. Now, Wednesday night, your community counted number 5, but you're here. Now it's Thursday for you. And everyone in Korea is counting number 6. You're going to count 5 because that's what you're up to. Okay. So you count where you're up to, not what the community is up to, because it's a personal preparation. You have to count 49 days, which means that when day 50 comes, Korea, if you're spending Shavuos there, they are one day ahead of you. You're doing Shavuos a day after them, because and by the way, that's the halacha. Your 50th day is later, and the same thing is if you come back. If you cross the date line, not that you left and came back, but if you cross the date line and you come here and we're counting a different day, you count your count, which could be ahead of us, and you'll do Shavuos a day early. Okay?
And because it's halakha, that's
absolutely, yeah.
That's right. So it doesn't matter what others do, it's what the individual.
So what do you see here? Is Shavuos something which is beyond our reach, or it's our reach? On the one hand, we're saying it's out of our reach because 50 is 50. You can't reach 50. You just do 49. Hashem will give you 50. On the other hand, we're saying it's all you're doing, because whatever count you're up to, when you get to 49, the next day is Shavuos. That is the uniqueness and the beauty of Torah, of the giving of the Torah, and of this holiday. It has the blend of both together. On the one hand, it's beyond any of your achievement. You can't reach it. On the other hand, it's all about you and your preparation and your effort and your counting. What's Torah? Torah is taking divine wisdom, Hashem's desire and teaching, his wisdom, his desire, giving it to us and allowing a human to relate to it, to connect to it, which is a tremendous idea. It's two opposites together. It's us, but it's beyond us. This is why Torah doesn't tell us exactly the day, because there's a part which is dependent on us. It's also the reason why Torah says it's the 50th, which is, right, beyond what you could achieve. It's you and it's beyond you. Shavuos is celebrated next Saturday night, and the way that we celebrate this Yontif is, first of all, it's a 2-day holiday, so we don't drive, we don't, etc. We stay up all night of Shavuos. I hope over the next few days to talk more about this Yontif, but we stay up all night, first night of Shavuos, and we learn Torah. On Shavuos, there's a custom to have dairy foods, and the main thing of celebration of Shavuos is to listen to the reading of the Ten Commandments on Shavuos and Shul. And the Rebbe encouraged that men, women, children, everyone should come to listen to the giving of the Torah. Because giving of the Torah on Shavuos is not just a commemoration, but every year when it's read, we're receiving the Ten Commandments again. The Rebbe would wish, that would wish us that we should receive the Torah b'simcha b'pnimius, with joy and inwardness, which means we're not reading about something that happened. It's zeh, it's here, it's present. We're taking it back into our own lives. We're internalizing it. We're making it part of us and trying to implement it even more and stronger than before. Let's take some questions from those that are watching online, those that are participating in person.
So it's actually 6th.
We commemorate on the 6th, yeah, but the fact is that in Gemara, it's an argument between Chazal, between Rabbanan and Rav Yesi.
And Hillel coordinate all the Shnati Boo and everything that it's falling.
Yeah.
Lemacharat Shabbat Pesach, then we can come.
Can you imagine the type of undertaking it was to make a calendar?
But the Gemara also says that they knew the calendar. They just wanted participation of the audience to see if they're telling the truth or not.
It's a very good point. But ultimately, and this goes back to our previous topic, humans have a certain power within Torah. Okay? When a Jewish court rules something within the structure of Jewish law, it has halachic power to it. It has the authenticity of Torah. And you could create reality, in a sense, within halacha through that. So yes, we knew when the calendar would be. It's whenever it is. It's a new month. It's a new year, the new month. But when the Beis Din says this is Rosh Chodesh, that becomes Rosh Chodesh.
Simple question.
Yes, no such thing as a simple question.
I'd like to know which is more important on that night we're supposed to stay up to listen to people speak